In this video, I will be exploring the various tags that are available when you build a fetch XML query. So I'll call this as fetch XML elements. Now, there are some keywords which you need to understand while building a fetch XML query. So the first one is fetch. So every fetch XML statement you create will have the fetch keyword in it. So fetch, and then as you see over here, this is fetch and then slash fetch. So you're opening a fetch tag and you're closing a fetch tag, and whatever logic or the rules you have, you specify within this section. Now, within fetch, you can have entity, attribute, order, filter, condition, and link entity. Now, as I mentioned to you, you need to have fetch. And within fetch, you can have entity and attribute. So if you have fetch, entity, and attribute, now this will be the simplest fetch XML query you can write. So you just specify which table and which column, and then your fetch XML gets constructed. Now, these are optional, like if you want to order, or if you want to do a filtering, or if you want to perform a condition, or if you want to link from another table, link entity. So these all things are optional, but fetch, entity, and attribute, like it should be bare minimum. However, you can still write a fetch XML code with just an entity, because if you skip attribute, you are essentially telling show me all the columns or retrieve all the columns. Okay, so this is how you can uh, craft those fetch XML elements. Now I will go through each and every element in my all the videos, but the goal of this exercise is just to show you the fetch element. Now, in the fetch element, in the fetch XML elements, like we come across various tags. So this is like a simple fetch XML. It has fetch in it, it has entity, it has attribute, it has link entity. Now you can even add filter, conditions, all those things within this fetch XML code. So we can make this code very complex. Now let's do one thing, like we have an option to just go ahead and create our own fetch XML. So let me delete all these things, and I will just type in, say, fetch tag. So I'm just creating this fetch XML code. Now this is fetch, and then within that I will start adding entity, and then within that entity I will start adding attribute. Now I can go ahead and create my own custom code, but it will be too much, now I can format this document in VS Code, but then if you want to write your code, it will be challenging, it will be time consuming. So instead of that, let's use a tool in XRM toolbox. So XRM toolbox tool called as fetch XML builder. Now here, if once you open the tool, you just say new query to the new tab. So I'm just refreshing my screen over here, and I will start drafting the fetch XML. So first thing, I will specify that I want top 50. Let me just say I want only 5 records. So I'll say fetch top 5, and the entity which I want is the custom entity which I have created. So let me pick up airlines. So I have this custom table airlines, and I will just say execute. The moment I do an execution of this fetch XML query, it will list down all the columns. So as you see over here, it has listed down all the columns, and it has only retrieved 5 records. Now, if you want to see the fetch XML, you just click on view, fetch XML, and then this is the simplest fetch XML view you can come across. But I would say, no, I don't want all the columns. I want in a cleaner view. So I will just click on this table, and I will say right click, add attribute. So I'll pick up a column. So I'll say I want a column of, say, name. So this is the name added, and I'll say I want one more column of total aircraft. So add attribute, and let me see if I have total aircraft over here. So yes, total aircrafts, and then I have 2 columns. Now let me execute it, and you will see this output name and the total aircraft and 5 records. Now, if I just don't specify anything over here, so I've just removed this. Let me execute this. It will list down all the record within the backend Dataverse table. So if you see the fetch XML, now it has started becoming complex. So I had fetch, I have entity, I have attribute. Now let's do one thing. Let's me put a distinct thing. So if I just specify distinct under fetch, you will see distinct equal to true. And let me execute this. And then as there are no duplicates, this record is same as the previous one. Now let me do one thing. I will just say right click and then add, and I will say filter. So I want to see only the attribute. So attribute is say name. So let me pick up name. Name, I can select equal, not equal, in, begins with, does not begin with, or contains. So let me pick up, let's see if I can pick contains, and the word is air in it. Okay, and execute it. I think it says unknown condition operator contains. So instead of that, let me pick up begins with air. If I use this, execute it, and then I get 3 records over here. So begins with air. So if you see the fetch XML, we have added a filter and we have added a condition. Now, if you want to extract the value from another column which gets referenced, so my entity airlines has a column called a supervisor, which is referencing a user table. So I can just do a right click, add attribute, and either I can pick up supervisor or a manager. Let me pick up supervisor. So I have the supervisor as a lookup, and that's it. You click supervisor over here, you execute that, and then you see that supervisor is so and so person, right? And then you can also do one more thing. You just do a right click, add link entity. Now the linked entity for airlines is I need to pick up the relationship one is to many. Now from a supervisor perspective or from a manager perspective, I have something listed over here. So I have the supervisor, which is pointing to a user table, many is to one relationship, pointing to the system user. And as you see, it has added this link entity. And once you get this things sorted, let me execute this, and then it will give you the supervisor ID. Now what if I want to get other things, like if I want to get supervisor's name, I can even get that information. So you can build your query from here. You can specify the join, inner, outer, any, not any, all, not all, exist, match, first row using cross apply. So all these things you can perform. You can even specify the link entity. You can specify the attribute. So if I just do a right click and add, and I'll say attribute, then I can specify the attribute, other attribute over here. Like if I want to show whether how many staff exists, so I just type in total staff, and then we can build the query. Now if I click on link entity over here, we have established this relationship from a user table just to make things more complex. So system user from system user ID, and then to Jacob supervisor. uh, you can also select different things from the table. Now we have just outputted the user ID. Now here, if I have anything else, like I can specify the position ID, queue ID, territory ID. We just specify how you want to link those relationship. So that's it, folks. This is all about the different elements. So here you will see all the elements like fetch, entity, attribute, filter, condition, link entity in a one single query. And in the upcoming videos, I'll try to cover each and every element and try to explain the significance or difference between those particular element and when to use which one. Thanks for watching.